When discussing the show Death Note, a common topic of conversation is Light Yagami's characterization. A lot of people have commented that they think Light Yagami is an accurate depiction of the mind of a malignant narcissist. You know, how they view the world, how they view relationships, how they move through the world, and how they engage with others. However, I'm pretty skeptical of comments like this. Our current society has taken these very important and very specific terms that medical and mental health professionals use and watered them down to the point where they're almost unrecognizable. And in the age of the internet, this has only gotten worse. We've seen this with terms like gaslighting, OCD most notably, and sociopath. And I believe that narcissism is actually one of the absolute biggest victims of this phenomenon. Hi, I'm Angel. I'm a licensed therapist, and today I want to explore whether or not Light Yagami truly is an accurate depiction of malignant narcissism. For the nature of this video, I would like us to ignore the fact that the Death Note itself is corruptive, and that Light Yagami without the Death Note is a very different person. Just for the purposes of this video, we're focusing not on that, because I could talk about that for hours, but that's a different construct. So first, I want us to clear up what a narcissist actually is. A narcissist is an individual diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, meaning that they have to meet the full diagnostic criteria outlined in the DSM-5. Per the DSM-5, in order to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, an individual must display a pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 5 or more of the following. Has a grandiose sense of self-importance, is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love, believe that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should be associated with other special or high-status people or institutions, requires excessive admiration, has a sense of entitlement, is interpersonally exploitative, lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others, is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. What a lot of people don't understand about people with narcissistic personality disorder is that they are not the grandiose facade they're putting on. It is just that, a facade. They're actually very deeply insecure. They struggle with a lot of self-doubt, and that's why they need so much admiration. They can also be highly perfectionistic and deeply fear failure, exposure to imperfection, or criticism. Now, this doesn't mean that every perfectionist that you know has narcissistic personality disorder. These are actually traits that also go along with other disorders like PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and obsessive compulsive personality disorder. What we're looking for isn't necessarily the trait itself, but what it looks like, how it presents, and where it comes from. Now that we've kind of got an overview of what narcissistic personality disorder is, let's talk about what it is not. Narcissism is a spectrum, and all people have narcissistic traits. The difference between having narcissistic traits and having narcissistic personality disorder is that these traits are pervasive, persistent, and cause clinically significant distress, or also known as a significant impairment in functioning. Here's a personal example. I personally am very, very perfectionistic and have a deep-rooted fear of failure and exposure to imperfection. The difference between me and someone with narcissistic personality disorder is that they are rooted in a different place, and they also don't cause me a severe impairment in functioning. Do I experience distress when things aren't perfect? Yes, but my motivation for striving for perfection is very different than that of somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder. I don't have a fragile ego that I'm trying to protect, and I don't experience reactive shame. While the DSM-5 itself only recognizes narcissistic personality disorder, researchers and clinicians have actually developed different subtypes that they recognize to kind of describe better how the symptoms of NPD present. The most common and clinically accepted subtypes are grandiose, vulnerable, and malignant. Grandiose narcissism is characterized by arrogance, dominance, and overt expressions of superiority. Vulnerable narcissism, however, is characterized by insecurity, introversive self-absorbedness, and a hypersensitivity to criticism. Malignant narcissism is characterized by extreme grandiosity, antisocial behaviors, sadism, and paranoia. What we're focusing on here today is malignant narcissism. Unless cited otherwise, the information I will be presenting here I got from Mila Goldner-Vukov and Lori Jo Moore's publication, Malignant Narcissism, From Fairy Tales to Harsh Reality, which I cannot recommend enough if you're interested in looking more into malignant narcissism. Otto Kernberg introduced malignant narcissism to the psychoanalytic literature in the 80s and outlined 4 characteristics of malignant narcissism. These are a typical core of narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial behaviors, egocentric sadism, and a paranoid ideation towards life. So let's break down how each of these behaviors individually applies to Light Yagami in Death Note. So what I'll be doing here is I will be quoting sections of the paper that I read and then explaining how I think that does or does not apply to Light. Let's start with the first characteristic, the core narcissistic personality disorder. People with malignant narcissism give the appearance of being self-sufficient and successful. I think this one's pretty obvious. Light is literally the top student in all of Japan. He's helped the police solve cases before, and he's generally admired by everyone around him. Covertly, however, they are fragile, vulnerable to shame, and sensitive to criticism. Failure to succeed in grandiose efforts results in prominent mood swings with irritability, rage, and feelings of emptiness. Light views his actions as Kira as justified and above the law because the people he's killing are criminals anyways who he thinks deserve to die. He thinks that it's also justified when he kills innocent people or has his allies do so, such as Rei Penbar, Naomi Misora, and their colleagues, as well as L. Further, when Light is thwarted or undermined, he experiences these intense mood swings in response. We see this for the first time when L uses Lind L. Taylor to lure out Kira and kind of discover what region of Japan he's in. He insults Kira, calling him evil and childish, and Light immediately goes into this fit of rage at not only being insulted by L so publicly, but being bested by him in a way. By killing Taylor, he revealed his location to L, breaking his delusion of being the infallible, untouchable god of the New World. We see this again very obviously. I actually think this is the best depiction of like the narcissist's breakdown and the breakdown of his delusion when he's finally caught by Nier in the very end of the series. After Nier corners Light and proves definitively that he is Kira, his calm, collected composure completely shatters, and he is left pathetically running away and crying, calling out to Misa, who he's discarded because she's no longer useful. Light spends his last moments pathetically melting down like a child because he's finally been outdone. He's overplayed his hand. In this moment, the grandiose delusion completely shatters, and his ego, his very fragile ego, is completely revealed to viewers. In the realm of love and sexuality, they are charming, seductive, and promiscuous, but unable to develop deep relationships. Light only develops relationships with women as a way to use these women, as a way to take advantage of them, and will only develop a relationship with a woman he thinks he can take advantage of or get something out of. The biggest example of this that we see throughout the series is his relationship with Misa Amane. He literally stated to Ryuk after Misa comes to him and professes her undying love for him that he's only going to use her for her romantic feelings for him. He's going to use those feelings as leverage to get her to do whatever he wants. He's only willing to be in a relationship with her because her undying devotion to him and her love for him allow him to get her to do things that'll benefit him in the future. He can throw her away whenever she's not needed. She gives up half of her lifespan for him 2 separate times, refuses to give him up even after being tortured by the police, and takes his abuses when he becomes overwhelmed and misplaces his frustrations onto her. I mean, even Ryuk points out that he's misplacing his frustration onto Misa. He does this again with Takeda, selling to her that she can be the goddess of the New World to his god, and then literally killing her when she's no longer useful. Disturbing feelings of inferiority, self-doubt, boredom, alienation, emptiness, and aimlessness underlie their persona. Light experiences chronic boredom, aimlessness, and emptiness before he receives the Death Note. This is one of the first things that we see. He finds all his tasks in life dull and unchallenging due to how intelligent he is. He really had nothing to do with his life and needed something to stimulate him, and being Kira, his work as Kira, kind of gave him some kind of motivation. It gave him like a driving force, something to work towards. He had a purpose now that filled that void of emptiness within him. However, he doesn't really display any overt signs of inferiority or self-doubt. He never really doubts himself, to my knowledge. If he does, it's very like minorly and for a fleeting moment. We don't get to see a lot of the fragile ego side to Light that you often see with someone with narcissistic personality disorder until like the very end, and also until we see him like having meltdowns. Next, let's talk about the antisocial behavior aspect of things. They are contemptuous of social conventions and show a passive tendency to lie, steal, and mismanage money. Light's entire existence as Kira is built upon a contempt for social conventions and deception. Light has extreme contempt for the current justice system and believes that his version of doing things is better even if it defies our current social conventions. He thinks that because of the state of the world, the social conventions don't matter. It doesn't matter that he's doing something that's objectively wrong because he's doing it for the greater good. He's also consistently using lies and half-truths to lead people away from him as a suspect in the investigation. He's a well-rehearsed liar. He's very, very good at making things up for himself, even on the spot. They may commit burglary, assault, or murder, and they may even become leaders of sadistic or terrorist groups. Light literally becomes a mass murderer that will kill anyone in his way of creating his new world. I don't know a better way to describe a terrorist, I'm going to be entirely honest with you. He builds a base of loyal followers that by the end of the series have turned into a cult that pray to him, like he is literally a god. With just the allies that we see in the show, he is having these people commit acts of mass murder and terrorism against his opposition. If Kira is not a terrorist, I genuinely don't know what a terrorist is. I'm going to be so honest. They are capable of feeling concern and loyalty for others, but primarily for their disciples or blind followers. I'm actually going to say that this is one that Light does not show really throughout the show. He is only loyal to his followers as much as it will benefit him. He throws them away entirely, literally killing some of them whenever they're no longer convenient for him. He views all other people as entirely disposable, regardless of the things that they've done for him, regardless of their loyalty to him. He does not care. He cares a lot more about building his new world and being the god of the new world than remaining loyal to anyone who's been loyal to him. They realize that others have moral concerns, but they easily rationalize their antisocial behavior. Light rationalizes the killing that he's doing by saying that he's making the world a safer place. He's making the world a safer place for everyone to be in because he's killing the people who are making it unsafe. And then he justifies killing innocent people by saying that they're enablers who allow the dangerous people to make the world dangerous. Next, let's talk about the egocentric sadism. Individuals with malignant narcissism have a tendency to destroy, symbolically castrate, and dehumanize others. Boy, does Light love to dehumanize other people. Light loves to dehumanize and make feel inferior individuals who oppose him or his ideal new world that he's trying to create, as well as those he just simply believes are inferior to him. He specifically goes out of his way to symbolically castrate or humiliate Elle in two different ways. First, as Elle is dying, Light gives him this smirk that lets Elle know that he was right the whole time, that Elle was Kira, and that Elle wasn't able to prove it. That at the end of the day, Light outlived Elle, and Light defeated him. He wants to make sure that the last thing Elle ever sees and Elle ever thinks about is the fact that there is proof that he lost and that Light won. Then, after Elle dies, Light takes on his title posthumously. This symbolically erases Elle, stealing his identity, his legacy, and his reputation. And lastly, let's talk about the paranoia, because Light Yagami is one paranoid boy. Kernberg believes the paranoid orientation of malignant narcissism may be the basic cause of their self-inflation. I genuinely believe that Light's God complex is a coping mechanism, a defense mechanism his brain has created to keep the paranoia at bay. Light believes everyone is out to get him and is thinking just as hard about him as he is about them. One could also argue that Light's deep-held belief that the world is such a dangerous place that someone needs to step in and take such extreme actions in itself is a display of paranoia. They have a deep sense of mistrust and view others as enemies, fools, or idols, either devaluing or idealizing them. As mentioned previously, Light believes that other people are inherently inferior to him. It doesn't matter who you are. If you exist and you are not Light Yagami, you are inferior to Light Yagami. He devalues and mistrusts literally anyone who opposes him, such as Elle, and holds contempt for people like Misa and other followers of his simply because he believes that they aren't as intelligent as him and that they just don't deserve to live as much as he does. They're not good enough for his new world. And, maybe he wouldn't necessarily kill them as long as they're not enabling anything or getting in his way. But nonetheless, he devalues them and he views them as fools that he has to come in and save and rescue. They have disorganized superegos and consequently lack the capacity for remorse, sadness, or self-exploration. Light's superego holds him and his actions to a different standard than other criminals who he literally believes deserves to die. He has killed multiple innocent people. He has committed acts of mass murder. And his superego is sitting here saying, well, my acts of mass murder are okay even when I'm killing innocent people, but these acts of mass murder and other things are not okay. And if you don't know what the superego is is the moral or the justice part of your ego. It's the justice kind of part of you. And he also shows absolutely no remorse for the innocent people who die in his pursuit of being the god of the new world. Talk about a huge contradiction. Now that we've done some discussion of Light Yagami, some of the features of malignant narcissism as it relates to the psychoanalytic literature and kind of connect the two, I want to talk a little bit about the way that the word narcissism is used frequently online. Specifically about the fact that the term narcissist has all but lost its meaning. Currently, especially in the age of TikTok, the term narcissism has been used to describe people who act selfishly, people who have wronged us, or people we simply don't get along with. Here's the thing, not every bad person is a narcissist. Not every selfish person is a narcissist. Not even every abuser is a narcissist. Narcissism is a very specific, very complex, and very severe mental health disorder that can be treated. When we synonymize the term narcissist with selfish person or bad person, we further stigmatize individuals who hold the diagnosis and downplay the severity of the disorder. People who have narcissistic personality disorder do experience distress because of the disorder. It impacts their lives in negative ways. It also impacts the lives of others in negative ways. Just like with other mental illnesses, the lives of the people around those individuals are impacted in negative ways. You know, I've said this before, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but there are certain mental health conditions that we have destigmatized and we've decided in society it's okay to have. It's okay to have depression. It's okay to have anxiety. You know, it's okay to have those things. And, you know, if other people around you are negatively affected by it, that's okay. Like, yes, your actions are your own and you need to take accountability for that, but that's okay because you're suffering from a mental health condition. But when it comes to personality disorders, we don't hold that same view, or also disorders like factitious syndrome or what was once known as Munchausen's. Furthermore, simplifying this term downplays the experiences of actual victims of narcissism and narcissistic abuse. Words have meaning. Words hold power. That's why I think that mental and medical health professionals should be gatekeeping certain terms. Narcissism is one of them. I find it really interesting that the same people I frequently see both in real life and online talking about how words have power and can be violent and severely negatively impact others are the same people who I see consistently misusing clinical terminology like this in a way that is harmful to others. So is Light Yagami a malignant narcissist? Based on what we read in the article and on what we read from the DSM-5, I would say he definitely has a lot of narcissistic traits and aligns pretty well with the definition of malignant narcissism. However, I wouldn't feel comfortable diagnosing a character who was not expressly written to portray malignant narcissism. I think it kind of feeds into the idea that you can diagnose a person from across a screen. I also think it feeds into the idea of labeling or giving a diagnosis to every person who engages in negative behavior or is just a bad person. Not every bad person has a mental health disorder or can attribute their bad behavior to a mental health disorder. Sometimes people just behave badly and do bad things. Is there usually something more behind it? Yes, but not every person who's doing it is mentally ill. Not every narcissist is a bad person, and not every bad person is a narcissist. To be transparent, my goal here was never actually to determine whether or not Light Yagami is a malignant narcissist. While I had lots of fun looking into malignant narcissism as a construct and as a concept, reading the article we talked about and learning more about Otto Kernberg and how he conceptualized malignant narcissism, my actual goal was different. My actual goal was to educate people on what narcissism truly looks like, to discuss the concept of malignant narcissism as it relates to the literature, and to dispel some of the misinformation that I've seen going around online. If you recognize these patterns in your life, whether it be with yourself or someone you know, please seek help from a qualified, licensed mental health professional. Narcissistic personality disorder is very complex and requires treatment, requires therapy. But with therapy, with that treatment, it can be treated. It is not a death sentence. I also don't want people sitting here and diagnosing themselves or diagnosing others in their lives. That's why I am emphasizing talk to a licensed professional, someone who does this, preferably someone who specializes in this area. If they don't specialize in this area, they will usually say, ooh, you need to go see a specialist. And if they don't, and they don't specialize in this, they don't see it often, that is a huge red flag. Therapy is essential to overcoming these patterns and managing your symptoms. I mean, you can even go into remission of your symptoms with narcissistic personality disorder, just like you can with any other mental illness. The sources that I used for this video will be linked down below in case you want to check them out yourself. I highly recommend checking out the article that I referenced. It was really, really interesting to read, and I didn't even dig into all of it. Truly, go read it. It's so fascinating if you want to know more about malignant narcissism. Bye.